EVO and Supernova are coming up in just a few weeks, and these events are massive for Rivals 2, with hundreds of players entering both of them. Something on everyone's mind, however, isn't just who's gonna win these events, but what characters will we see dominate them. The meta has been more or less a mystery since Zetterburn and Rono got their delicious portion of nerfs just a few weeks ago, and I wanted to source a non-biased tier list. To do this, I asked 100 members of my community across multiple skill levels what they thought of the meta right now. Players were asked to rank characters on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being completely unviable and 10 being meta-defining. You didn't have to rank a character 1 or 10, however, if you didn't want to. And a quick note on that I found interesting is that no one actually ranked any fighter a 1, which is probably a good sign. If you've seen a video like this from me before, you probably also know that I ask a few more questions than just character viability. I asked responders their rank, their main, and I gave them an open-ended question at the end, allowing them to tell me what they think of each fighter. I'll use that info to source notes about those characters' viability throughout the video. I'm not going to spend too long on these, but as always, I will be making 3 tier lists for today. A main tier list with everyone's responses accumulated and accounted for. A low-level tier list with only responses from silver and below players, and a high-level tier list with responses from diamond players and up. I used to do a mid-level list factoring in only gold and plat players, but they make up the majority of responders, and spoilers, that means that their list is more or less the same as the general tier list with all their responses factored, minus a few marginal changes. To start our list, I think it's best to start at the lowest ranked fighters, and work our way up to the highest. Since each character was ranked on a scale of 1 to 10, I can source an average score for each fighter. If you pay close attention, you'll notice that there's not really any bad fighters in the game, just some that are clearly worse or better than others. It's kinda corny to say, but I wouldn't want someone feeling like their main was unviable from a list like this alone, especially when factoring in that every character is placed in top 8 of a major recently. With that being said, our weakest character, according to you guys, is Loxodon. Loxodon is truthfully really slow, has a lacking recovery, and is on the large side. Press number 1 in the comments if you can relate. This adds up to a terrible disadvantage state for the Emperor, and since his frame data doesn't have a lot of room for quick mashy get off me buttons or necessarily the best scrapping tools in a close quarter quarrel, Loxodon is left in the dust when up against some of the faster fighters. A lot of players noted that Lox does feel great to combo with and to play neutral with when you're not getting outmatched or put in disadvantage over and over. His big buttons allow for Lox to apply pressure at a range that most of the cast just simply can't match. And his explosive kill moves can take stocks really early. Combos like his double dunk off stage with down air, or setting up a back air with a 50-50 can easily squash opponents early. But that doesn't really add up to him being great when his disadvantage is so scary to pilot. A lot of players also noted that they weren't sure what Loxodon needs in his kit to become strong. Since he doesn't necessarily feel bad himself like I mentioned, his buttons are all fine, it's just that other characters can punish him a lot harder than he can in return in most scenarios, ranking him here at the bottom of the list with a score of 5.4 out of 10. Everyone's favorite Club Penguin OC is up next, Edelus. Edelus has been known to chill at the unoptimal end of these lists, unfortunately, and this isn't to say that you can't make waves with the bear either. Standout players like Adam and Animal both top 8 the most recent RCS online major with the Fuzzy Friend. However, similarly to Loxodon, Edelus hasn't hopped on the Ozempic trend yet, and has a big body disadvantage state comparable, if not worse than the elephant himself. Edelus, however, does have a better combo game than Loxodon by a good bit. Truthfully, if Edelus wasn't held back by his lacking disadvantage state and recovery, he'd probably be towards the top half of this list, since his advantage and neutral have so much opportunity and power behind them. I had multiple commenters pick out a move from his kit and describe it as overpowered, like his down air, which is a consistent, lingering spike, his neutral air and back air, which are both great and easy to land neutral tools, and they also can start combos, and even his side B, since the ability to disrupt recoveries without any active effort or risk from Edelus himself felt really oppressive, especially against characters with already limited recovery options. In my opinion, however, there's other fighters in the game with comparable kits that don't suffer from such a scary disadvantage, which is why our bear friend is way down here with an average ranking of 5.5 out of 10. Our last character in this lower end tier is Fleet. Fleet is notably distinct from our other low tier troopers, since she's not a heavy, and has discovered the wonders of Ozempic. However, Fleet hasn't discovered how to get past her bad matchups. She struggles against disjoints larger than hers, which is most disjoints in the game, and against characters with faster frame data than her, which is most rushdown fighters in the game. There's not a clear part of her kit that's terrible. I mean, sure, her movement isn't the best, which means that she can't really put space between her and her opponent with that alone, and then she also can't optimally close gaps from a burst option either. But even then, her projectiles and slowfall do help patch that up. Her combos can also net huge reward, since her slowfall that I mentioned earlier can help her walk opponents off stage, or even line her up for an early down air snipe. She also has great tech chasing options with her projectiles, and her juggling isn't half bad either. It's clear that Fleet simply gets overpowered in neutral, whether that be from the lack of a way to defend herself due to slow moves, or movement. This isn't to say that you can't make it work with her, it's just a lot harder than someone with more consistent options. This placed Fleet at a score of 6.2, a good bit higher than the other fighters in this tier, but not really high enough for me to justify her up in the next one. Before we move on to the next tier, I do want to take a minute to beg for your likes, since those actually go a really long way in the YouTube algo, and help me fund my free weekly tournaments. Please, please, please leave a like. Okay, I'm done begging for now, and let's get back to the video. Our first fighter in the strong tier is Absa. Absa is our newest rival and a strong fighter. However, the combination of her having lots of tools to learn and master, as well as her lightweight and floatiness, means that she's both hard to control and easy to punish. These mistakes on her cost a lot more than they might make on a heavier or more standard fighter. But she recently got buffed, so her placement in my opinion will only go up over time as players fully flesh out her kit and advantage state. On the other hand, her using lots of projectiles and timed moves makes her vulnerable to getting parried, and as counterplay is formed against her, players will have this more down as well. Her neutral is also kinda similar to Fleet's in the fact that characters with larger hitboxes can normally wall her out, and characters with faster buttons can normally smother her. All of this is to say that she has the potential to be really strong, but currently the culmination of her difficulty and simple counterplay, along with her being super new, makes her not so scary in the current meta. She scored with an overall score of 6.5 out of 10. The next fighter in this tier is Forsburn. Forsburn's familiar to anyone who watches a lot of top level gameplay frequently, since Cake Assault pilots this Smoke Clan creature. A lot of his strength this patch can be found from his safe normal buttons, like back air, down tilt, and down air, and his ability to force the tempo of a game to change to his will, since he can opt to approach with one of these safe options, or with a barrage of special buttons like Clone and Smoke, which are especially effective when used out in the air and then mixed with a safe aerial landing. Forsburn also has great kill power, especially when he wants to steal stocks early with his combust version of Down B, which can throw opponents into the blast zone out of easy to chase 50-50 confirms from a lot of moves that knock opponents up or out. This all seems pretty strong, but you gotta remember that Forsburn's fastest moves don't quite outspeed the fighters above him, and his recovery can feel pretty limited, especially when an opponent is able to intercept his side B or break his smoke when he needs them to recover. He can feel a little lost off stage. This culminates in Forsburn being rated a nice 6.9 out of 10. Leave a like if you get it. Krag is up next with only a 0.01 difference from Forsburn. Krag is clearly the strongest heavy in the game, with lots of representation both at top and high level. In fact, he was the most played character in the most recent RCS event, and has tons of results throughout the game's lifespan. His rock and big hitboxes allow him to wall opponents out, but also allow him to safely approach and force openings when he's looking to start a combo, or just make neutral a little easier for himself. His recovery is pretty consistent too. It's been nerfed a few times, and there's a handful of characters like Fleet that can regularly keep him out, but against the majority of the cast, it's not too alarming compared to the other heavies. Krag's kill power is also plentiful, with moves like back air, down throw, and down B, all connecting into kill options pretty easily. Speaking of easy, Crag's simplicity makes him really consistent. There's not really a moment where you're piloting the character and you feel like you're lost due to just one small mistake, the same way you would be with someone like Absa. This all allows Crag to reach a nice, even ranking of a 7 out of 10. Our next fighter starts out our new tier. These characters are all clearly a leg up above the ones below them, but they're not the best of the best just yet. That'll be the tier after this one. To kick us off, we have Raster. Raster just received a big rework and has lots of new combo routes and tons of combo potential. I recently actually went over all that with Torque and Dakvo just last week on the podcast, but in case you missed it, I'll give a really quick summary. Raster is great at killing early with walk-off combos that can confirm into moves like his F-Strong, or other options to sneak in an early kill from ledge guarding. However, Raster also dies super early due to his lightweight and poor movement without Slipstream. Slipstream did get a change recently, making it a lot more intuitive, but it also makes Raster a lot less forgiving to play at the top level. Speaking of different levels of play, Raster was one of the characters with the most changes and varied notes based on players' skill level. A lot of lower level players knew that they had a really hard time playing as him and fighting against him, while higher level players felt that his combo game could be overly oppressive in some spots, landing him at a comfy 7.3 out of 10. We have a small jump in ratings between Raster and Olympia, but she's up next. A lot of commenters noted that she's not only mashy, but also safe with these mashy options, making her really hard to fight. Her high kill power can sink opponents like a rock, both off stage with her spikes, and into the side blast zones with options like up B, and the non-sweet spot hit of forward air. Her low percent combos are also devastating, since moves like neutral air and up air are great for extending combos, and she has consistent combo routes off of moves like down tilt, up tilt, and her grab. Her kit has only been improved over time as players have got a better hold on her. However, a few nerfs from a few months ago have definitely held her back more than Ollie mains would probably prefer. These nerfs weren't as drastic as nerfs to characters like Rano and Zetterburn, or even Fleet a long while ago if you remember that. Players that chose to rank Olympia low noted that her tricky recovery and fast fall speed made her easy to push an extended advantage state on, and that she would die if you could hit her on the way back to the stage. These traits don't necessarily make her terrible, and if I was making this list, I'd truthfully bump her a spot or two up, but they definitely do hold her back to an extent, netting Olympia with a score of 7.7. Orcane is next. The Whale Dog has risen up the tier list with just a few small changes. If we think back actually, Orcane didn't receive any direct buffs in the recent round of changes. However, wave dashing was made 2 frames less laggy. This means that any character, like Orcane, that loves to wave dash basically becomes 2 frames faster on all their neutral startup. This smoothed out Orcane's neutral and took him from a character who sometimes struggled to get in, to a character that could consistently get in, and combo for huge damage. This isn't to mention his explosively high kill power, that truthfully to me, feels a bit like cheating on occasion. As an Orcane main, I personally don't mind it one bit, but I can't imagine that my opponent enjoys being hit by up tilt back air and dying at 80 to a more or less true combo. Orcane's also not super edge guardable by a handful of the cast, especially if they have low mobility, since they need to commit to chasing him down off stage, and then he can teleport to his puddle, or they can opt to guard the puddle and he can recover normally. His only real weakness right now is his lack of range on his normals, but they're so quick and lagless this patch like I mentioned that if you play properly it doesn't really matter too much, awarding Orcane a solid, or I guess liquid in his case, 7.8 out of 10. Orcane's other bubble buddy Rano pops into our chart next. Rano is frankly great at scrapping, has good movement, great normals, good combos, and consistent kill options. However, the most recent patch made his recovery a lot easier to ledge guard, and his weight being on the lighter end can lead to him dying a hair earlier than he would normally prefer. However, his ability to needle camp allows him to play more defensively when he's not really looking to take a full engagement with his opponent. Needle camping did get a slight nerf, but there's still lots of ways to use it and take advantage of it throughout each match, since, as some players noted, just having the ability to slow down the game's tempo whenever you'd like is really strong in and of itself. With all that being said, Rano doesn't really have a clear downside, but some characters are simply a little stronger than him, which is why he joins our list at a score of 7.9 out of 10. Our final fighter in this tier is Zetterburn. Zetter, just like Rano, was on the receiving end of a few nerfs last patch. However, these nerfs were tailored to keep the character strong, but not oppressive anymore. If you're a player who took a break from the game and were waiting until Zetter was more in line, don't be bummed that he's this high. He feels more fair, at least, according to the open-ended section of this video. Luckily for Zetter, however, most of his advantage state is still intact. He has limitless combos, great kill power, and his low knockback moves, besides back air, still give great 50-50 kill opportunities. Where Zetterburn struggles now, however, is offstage. Now that his up special slows down as it goes, it's a lot easier to dunk Zetter into the bottom blast zone, or steal the ledge from him while he's trying to make his way there. This means that the highs and lows of Zetterburn have still been kept intact, but opponents are actually able to access those lows a lot easier. A lot of low-level players noted that he still feels really strong, which is why he's this high, to be honest. But I think that that's more due to them not being able to access his counterplay quite as easily as the high-level equivalents, which we'll touch on here in a minute. Clocking Zetterburn in at a score of 8.0. This means that Zetterburn, Orcane, Rano, and Olympia are our most balanced fighters, all with being in 0.4 points of each other. If even just 5 to 10 responders had ranked them a little differently, their orders could have drastically changed. So I'd imagine this tier is being loosely ordered, since even though it is technically ordered to what the community voted, it's so close that it's hard to imagine that it's quite as structured within their tier as characters in the tiers below. Finally, for our top tier, these characters are all closely ranked, with one clocking at a score of 8.44 and the other at a score of 8.47. For our lowest fighter first, we have Maple. Maple is in a great spot this patch. Truthfully, she was never bad, but her buddies Rano and Zetterburn getting a bit weaker made Maple's strengths much more apparent. Maple is known for long combos and early double dunks off the side, which became a lot more consistent on the cast over time as things like wall jump heights and recoveries were tuned down. This means that Maple is not only killing more consistently, but recent buffs and reworks to how her tether works makes comboing with it easier too. Especially if your opponent is someone like me, who forgets to use both sticks to DI. Floor Hug Gains changes also helped Maple a lot, since in the last patch, her low knockback moves would be pretty easy to crouch cancel and floor hug. But now, you'll take a bit extra damage when you do, shutting down a common counterplay that she had in the past, especially around mid and high percents. Maple is pretty light, but her advantage state guarantees that she can kill you just as early as you can kill her. For our final fighter, we have Claren up at the tippity top. Before I checked this data, I assumed that Claren, Maple, or Arcane would be up here, since they've all seen great success this patch. Claren, however, has a small upper hand since she doesn't necessarily lose as many matchups as the other two that I mentioned. Her sword allows her to space moves safely, while also not having super terrible frame data and comboing incredibly hard. A lot of commenters noted that moves like up tilt, up air, and down air all have super generous hitboxes, and guarantee follow-ups even if she doesn't land the tipper. And her neutral air is consistent for drag downs and refreshing combos. Her recovery is also pretty consistent, since the only time she's really vulnerable is after her side B, and if she goes low enough, some fighters can't really risk chasing her down there to secure the kill. This all comes together to award Claren with the title of best in the game for now, with Maple not too far behind at all. Even with a fighter as strong as Claren up here at the top, I wanted to make a little visual showing how closely each character was ranked. It's a lot closer than you'd think, with no character being rated lower than a 5. This leads me to believe that every character is viable as I stated at the start. There's just different levels of viability, especially at different levels of gameplay. Speaking of that, I want to take a quick peek at low-level and high-level players' charts to give context to how players are feeling about different characters within their respective ranks. Since if you're a bronze player, me telling you that Maple is really strong might not really help you a whole lot, since spoiler, she's going to be dropping a few tiers here. Characters like Loxodont, Crag, Fleet, and Zetter all jumped up a hair, while Orcane, Olympia, and Raster all moved a little lower on the list by varying amounts. I have an adjusted list for the silver and below rates here on screen right now. For our high level tier list, we saw a bit of the opposite. Edalus actually rose just a bit, but not a ton. Orcane and Olympia also saw slight increases, and Zetterburn and Rano saw slight decreases. I think this is due to their counterplay being more widely available in these ranks, So characters like Zedder that have high highs are actually forced to face their low lows as well when their opponents properly apply their counterplay. I also asked a few bonus questions at the end of the survey, just for giggles to cap off the video with a bit more info. Truthfully, I like to make a tier list every few months, and I wanted this one to be a bit different, so my new questions were: how much does high and top level player opinions and tournament play influence your ratings? What characters would you nerf, and what characters would you buff? For the first one, most players said they're at least slightly influenced by high level and top level play, while some decided to note that they were more so influenced by the players they play or maybe someone in a local scene. One player responded that they have a really strong Edelus friend, which makes them think that Edelus is actually super oppressive and very strong, when clearly the average responder thought that he was on the lower end of the list, which makes sense. For characters that players would opt to nerf, we more or less fall into the line with our tier list. Clarin is a clear frontrunner here, with Maple right behind, then Rano, Orcane, and Zetterburn. Truthfully, with how the developers are choosing to focus each patch on a different set of characters, I imagine our upcoming patch will really look into Orcane, Maple, and Clarin, as well as potentially one fighter in need of a bit of love at the lower end of the list. I don't think any of these characters need big changes personally, but I'd like to see some kind of adjustment to Clarin that could keep her tipper combos powerful, while not giving her so much reward for her sour spots. Clearly, Orcane also needs some kind of adjustment to either his kill power or ultra-fast neutral options. But I'd be worried that nerfing his normals and kill power alongside changing something like his weight or recovery might make him pretty rough to play, like he was a few months ago. As far as Maple goes, a few commenters noted that she should either die a little bit earlier, or not kill quite as early with moves like Up B, since it's normally really easy to get after a long juggle. On the other hand, players voted to buff characters a lot less frequently, with no player even opting to buff Clarin, which was surprising compared to everyone's request to be nerfed. However, Edelus, Fleet, and Lox were all noted as needing some love. Interestingly, even though players ranked Loxodon on the lower end of the list, more players were excited to buff the other two fighters that I mentioned. I had a few players note that Fleet and Edelus just needed small tweaks to be more consistent, like letting Fleet cancel her down B in the same way that Zedder does as a movement option, or giving some quality of life changes to Edelus up B, allowing him to rise slower or faster to mix up where he's at. While Loxodon was commonly noted to need a few parts of his kit completely reworked. I'm not sure how the balanced team would go about this, since I like how Loxodon feels right now an advantage, but it's clear his recovery and disadvantage need just a little bit of help if he's looking to compete with the fighters in the tiers above him. With that being said though, that just about wraps up our full tier list discussion. I'll be having Jorg and Max on the podcast later this week. They're two top high-level players that'll be giving us a lot of insight on the current landscape of the game, and breaking down who's actually good, and what fighters might be a little shaky going into events like EVO and Supernova. Speaking of Supernova, I'll be there! So if you want to get in some games or just say hi, let me know in my Discord link below so I can run a few sets with you. As always, thanks tons for watching until the end, and I can't wait to see how the metagame shakes up over the next few months. Truthfully, I'll probably wait another 3 or 4 months until the next tier list video, since I know that they can get a bit tired. But I wanted to give a big thanks to everyone who helped make this one possible down in the description. It's so awesome seeing so much community involvement on projects like these, and I'll have another community rankings for something in the game coming out within the next month, I'm sure. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.